Thank you for watching. This is the E for One Entertainment for One podcast. I am your host. I am your gentle tour guide, Anthony. Thank you. I appreciate you watching. And before we get any further, let me just get this out the way. Subscribe. Do subscribe to the channel, like and share this video if you will. I greatly appreciate it. And this is just like totally off the cuff right here, because I was thinking like LL Cool J has been making his presence, known and felt in the industry, music and entertainment for years. But his presence he's been seen more often now than we've seen him in a while. I think so. The Grammys just happened a couple weeks ago, and he was like the host of the Grammys. He has his own radio station on Sirius XM called Rock the Bells Radio. But LL is gearing up to drop this album, okay, that is executive produced solely, thoroughly, all the way by Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest, legendary Q-Tip from the group A Tribe Called Quest. Ella has been talking about this album for going on 3 years now. Still, we don't have an album, although he did give us a brief update.
Everybody's been asking me about the new record and my decision. I was considering not putting the record out because it's too fucking good! Q-Tip, you a genius, baby. Yo, this is my favorite album I ever made. I can't wait for y'all to hear this.
So that started to get me thinking, what are not only my favorite LL albums, but where do we rank all of LL Cool J's albums?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
LL has a huge discography. He has a couple mixtapes. He has a mixtape that he did with the late great, rest in peace, DJ K Slay.
Rest in peace, shout out DJ K Slay, the drama king.
It was good to see him get into the mixtape game in the mid-early 2000s when that joint dropped. When did it drop? That joint dropped in like 2008. It was called Return of the Gold mixtape. So it was good to hear LL Cool J on a mixtape, because we had never heard that before previously. But we're gonna take that out of this equation and the greatest hits album out of the equation. Where do I rank LL Cool J's albums? We're gonna start from some of his albums that were not my favorite and work our way up. Shall we do that? You wanna do that? Come on, let's do that. You know you wanna do that. LL Cool J's last few albums that he came out with in the mid 2000s were not some of my favorite albums. His last album, Authentic, really didn't like that album. That came out in 2013. I don't even remember these songs. Do you remember any of these songs on Authentic? He had a joint called Ratchet. He had Ratchet, Getting Paper, Bath Salt, Take It. I don't remember any of these songs. Listen, let's just totally skip that album. Authentic might have been LL's, might have been. Authentic was LL Cool J's worst album in his discography. No, we're gonna say that might be his worst album. It is. Then I'm gonna go with Exit 13. That joint dropped when did it drop? It dropped in 2018. No, not 2018. That was just a couple years ago. It dropped in 2008, if I stand corrected. This one right here, the joints that was on here that really stood out to me, just looking over this joint, Rockin' with the Goat. I remember that came out. I think that was produced by Rockwilder. I think so, if I remember correctly. Rockin' with the Goat was it was a little Mr. Roper, if you remember Three's Company. Other than that, Ringtone Murder featuring Grandmaster Caz. I guess that one was okay. Baby. Remember. Listen, Exit 13 was pretty bad too. No, that wasn't it. Okay, Exit 13. Okay, then after Exit 13, I'm gonna say that the Todd Smith album he came out with in 2000. LL was coming out with some joints like albums like every other year actually in the early 2000s. The Todd Smith album, I wasn't feeling this album either. This one had Control Myself on there with Jennifer Lopez. That was a standoff lead jump off single. Control Myself, and that was like the only song on here that really stood out to me as being like a major video, a major had a push behind it. He had a joint with Jules Santana on there called LL and Santana. Mary J. Blige was on there, my favorite flavor, Freeway. He had a joint with Freeway. So he was collaborating with a lot of newer hip-hop artists on there at the time, like Juelz and Freeway. Tierra Marie was on there. Mary J. Blige, like I said, Genuine was on there, 112. So, but this album really wasn't that good either. It really wasn't that great. So you could pretty much mix the Todd Smith album, Authentic, and Exit 13 all in one and say that those are three of LL's worst albums. It's pretty much the same album. It's a triple CD because it's just that bad. But now Definition came out in 2004. I thought Definition was okay. Definition had some joints on there. If you remember, he had a Timbaland produced track, Headsprung. That was a real big radio banger back then. And then he had Feel the Beat, which was another track that was produced by Timbaland. That was kind of decent, kind of nice. I liked that at the time. One in the Morning was on there. I liked that track. And that was about it. He had Hush was on there. Hush was a pretty decent radio hit. I think that one was the one that had did that have The Dream on it? I can't remember. But Hush. Anyway, that album did have some radio joints on there. Although it had radio joints on there, it still wasn't one of my favorite LL albums whatsoever. Then after the Definition in 2004, I'm gonna go with LL Cool J's album 10 in 2002. Now this was around the time when I met LL Cool J in the club back in 2002. He was like, yo, what's going on, baby? What's going on? So I remember at the time when this album came out, it had a few heaters on there. It had two heaters on there that I absolutely loved. Love You Better, which is probably one of LL Cool J's best songs in the last 20 years. Really the last 23 years since 2000 around the time this album came out in 2002. Love You Better was just produced by the Neptunes, Pharrell and Chad. When Neptunes was real hot, the Neptunes was the hottest producers in the game at the time, and they was lacing everybody with bangers, and they definitely laced LL Cool J with Love You Better. That was one of my favorite LL Cool J songs of all time, and the beat was just so immaculate on there. And then he had another song on there that I used to bump called For Her. That was a joy. And then he had The Paradise on there. That single, I remember that came out, and that got a lot of considerable airplay too, because Paradise had A. Marie on there. So 10 wasn't a bad album, though. Far from being a good album, but it wasn't a bad album. It was a decent album. I thought it was better than the other three albums I mentioned. It was cool. It was all right. It was okay. It was a nice little ditty. Nice little all right album. Okay, now we're going to jump into the core of what I think are some of LL Cool J's best albums right here. After I get into this album right here. Well, you know what? Let me reverse that. Phenomenon came out in 1997. I thought Phenomenon was cool. It was okay. It was alright. It had 4321 on there, the classic song of all time featuring DMX, Red and Meth, Cannabis. Master P was on the remix. So Phenomenon, even though Phenomenon wasn't a good album, it had like that standout track. That was really the only track on there. Something Like a Phenomenon, I really wasn't feeling that. Baby Girl was draped in Chanel. Said she loved Tupac, but hates some LL. Taking a little small shot at Tupac right there. That's probably why that little riff between him and Tupac started, maybe because of that line. But I really didn't care for the Phenomenon album at all. So I'm gonna put Phenomenon as one of LL's worst albums before I put the album that I mentioned previously, which was 10. I thought 10 was better than Phenomenon, but Phenomenon had 4321 on there. It's a classic song. He also had Wanna Get Paid on there featuring Mr. Cheeks was on that joint. He was on the hook. Wanna Get Paid. Another Dollar was hot. Another Dollar. So LL Cool J had like maybe 2 or 3 tracks on there. 3 tracks on there that I like, but other than that, the album was pretty much trash. I'm just calling for what it is, even though I love LL, one of my favorite artists of all time. So yeah, we're gonna go with 10, then Phenomenon. Okay, let's jump into some LL Cool J's best work right here. We're gonna get into the nitty gritty right here. 14 Shots to the Dome came out in 1993. After Mama Said Knock You Out album came out. 14 Shots to the Dome was one of those albums that he was coming off of the mega success of Mama Said Knock You Out album. So everybody was anticipating this album and thought it was going to be another smash banging album. But even though 14 Shots to the Dome didn't hit it commercially, like Mama Said Knock You Out did, it was more of a street album for the streets. It was more of a hip hop, like hip hop street album. It wasn't as commercially appealed and applauded as Mama Said Knock You Out was, the previous album that just took LL Cool J career like to a whole nother level. The 14 Shots to the Dome did have some joints on here that I liked, but even though the album, like I said, it didn't sell, it didn't hit like that. Backseat of My Jeep, one of LL Cool J's best songs, was on this album. I love Backseat of My Jeep. Pink Cookies in a Plastic Bag. The remix though, the remix was the one that was really the song, my favorite all of my favorite LL Cool J songs of all time. Pink Cookies in a Plastic Bag, the remix, was probably in my top 3, really, in my top 2, top 3. If not my best LL Cool J song. The remix just had, that it was better. It was more smooth. It had a more, prevalent and better sample to it. I thought the remix was so dope, but he didn't put it on the album. That's where you messed up. He only released it on the video. He should have put it on the album. But 14 Shots to the Dome had that on there. Bucking Them Down was on there. Crossroads was on there. How I'm Coming was on there. And that was pretty much it. Stand By Your Man was on there. So Funkadelic Relic was on there. Mr. Roper. But yeah, 14 Shots to the Dome wasn't one of my favorite LL Cool J albums. It had his joints on there. It was better than the other 5 albums I just mentioned by far. Okay, now here we go. Favorite LL Cool J albums, and we're gonna do it like this. I can officially rank these albums 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. LL Cool J's top 6 albums right here. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go with album number 6. This is difficult. LL Cool J album number 6 would probably be Walking with a Panther. Very dope album. I used to love this album, and the cover was just so dope with the Panther in there. LL Cool J, I'm the Type of Guy, one of my favorite LL Cool J songs of all time was on there. I loved I'm the Type of Guy. 1-900 LL Cool J, the original Dolly My Baby sample was used on that. 1-900 LL Cool J, It Gets No Rougher. Big Old Butt was on there. Anthem, Jingling Baby, the original version, not the remix. Going back to Cali, Why Do You Think They Call It Dope? Nitro, Clap Your Hands, Fast Peg. I mean, Jack, he had it was just Jack the Ripper. I mean, it was just a dope album, you know what I'm saying? Not to put it, even though I'm putting it at number 6, that doesn't take away the fact that it was a classic album. Still a dope album, very dope album. But something's got to go at number 6, and I think Walking with a Panther, out of all the other albums I'm about to, finish this off with, I think that was my. Even though I love that album, it doesn't rank up there with the other albums that I'm about to tell you. So that's number 6. Number 5, I'm gonna go with number 5. I'm gonna go with I might catch some flack behind this, but I'm doing this off the cuff. Number 5 is I'm gonna go with Radio. Radio was number 5, even though it was LL Cool J's first album. Some people might say it's his first and best album. It had I Need a Beat on there. It had Rock the Bells was on there. It had some classic joints on there. Radio was not an album that I really bumped like that because it came out in 1985. And in 1985, I was like 6-7 years old. So over time, the album really hasn't resonated with me as it has had with probably some of you, because you're more familiar with that era, where I came into the era of hip hop closer to like 87, 88. That was like 2 years prior to I fell in, like totally fully immersed and fell in love with hip hop. 85. I didn't fall fully immersively, gracefully in love with hip hop until like maybe 1988, late 87. So I'm gonna say Radio. Yeah, Radio would be number 5. Number 4, I'm gonna say number 4 would probably be Mr. Smith. Number 4 with Mr. Smith. Very good album. I bumped this album, played this album a lot in high school in 1995. It had Hollister Hollywood on there, but is it good? One of my favorite LL joints. Mr. Smith was on there. God Bless. Papa Love It. I Shot Ya. Then the I Shot Ya remix. I ain't even got to talk about the I Shot Ya remix. That was one of the best remixes of all time with Prodigy, Fat Joe, Keith Murray, so many people on there. Then it had Hip Hop was on there. He had a lot of smooth joints on this album, but this was somewhat of a comeback album for LL Cool J because previously he dropped the 14 Shots to the Dome album like 2 years earlier, and that was a commercial flop, and even though the streets kind of thought it was a good album, it just did horribly commercially. So LL Cool J was on the comeback trail when he dropped this album. People had counted him out, but once he dropped that first single, Hey Level with Boyz II Men, that just took his career to a whole nother level in the mid-90s and reintroduced him to a whole new audience. Number 3 is, I'm going with Bad. Bigger and Deffer in 1987. I mean, this album, what can I say? It had The Breakthrough on there. That was one of my favorite LL Cool J songs in general and of that era. The Breakthrough was on there. He had I'm Bad on there. Classic song. I mean, I Need Love was on there. Go Cut Creator. Just I Need Love, that song right there pretty much set the trend for hip hop love joints. When you think of artists that paved the way for the quote unquote hip hop love ballad, hip hop love joint, hip hop love song, you think of LL Cool J as soon as you hear hip hop love joint, a love song. He set that trend in 1987 with I Need Love. So that's LL Cool J. It's my third favorite album by LL Cool J. Third best album, I feel, by LL Cool J. Number 2, and I'm surprised y'all with the number 1. Number 2, Mama Said Knock You Out, 1990. Some people say that's his best album. I wouldn't argue with that. It's a classic album. Around the Way Girl, Jingling Baby, the remix. Mama Said Knock You Out. 6 Minutes of Pleasure, which was, I prefer once again the video version, the remix version over the version that appeared on the album. Booming System, Milky Cereal, To the Break of Dawn, and LL Cool J relinked with Marley Marl, depending on how your dialect, how your slang is, how your accent is. I always say Marley Marl. That's how you pronounce it. He relinked with him for this album, and this album was a very good album. This was probably one of LL Cool J's most focused albums. A lot of LL Cool J's albums, especially in the 2000s on, as soon as the 2000s hit, really kind of was like all over the place and really wasn't focused. But this probably was like LL Cool J's most focused albums, one of his most focused albums, if not the most focused album. Can't argue with that. Number 1, my personal favorite number 1, even though everybody's going to probably disagree with me, was the album from 2000, The GOAT. The GOAT album by LL Cool J. There's only like 3 albums by LL Cool J, maybe 4, that I can listen to from beginning to end without skipping. That's this album, the GOAT album, Mama Said Knock You Out, Mr. Smith, and probably Walking with a Panther. But more or less, the 3 LL albums that I can listen to nonstop without any skips would be Mama Said Knock You Out, Mr. Smith, and the GOAT. This GOAT album right here was LL Cool J coming into the year 2000 with a bang. I mean, this album, the production on this album was probably LL Cool J's best production that he's ever had from a hip hop street point of view. And the features on this album was just automatically just amazing. He had Prodigy on this album. Mobb Deep did. Havoc did production on this album. Queens is one of my favorite LL Cool J songs featuring the late great Prodigy. Havoc did that track. Ill Bomb, one of LL Cool J's best songs, produced by DJ Scratch did that. DJ Scratch did Ill Bomb, which was absolutely crazy. Even the commercial joints, the crossover radio joints, the singles that he released for commercial appeal really had an edge to it and was really dope. Imagine That was produced by the Rockwaller. Then he had Homicide on there, which was giving you a street tale. That one had a nice little beat to it, had a message to it. This Is Us was dope. Carl Thomas was on that. That was a banger. He had Ja Rule on there. Back Where I Belong. Back when Ja Rule was scorching hot, he had Ja on there. Then he had Red MF on Forget About It. And then he had Kelly Price on the joint, You and Me, which was a female joints, female love song that was absolutely scorching. And can't forget about the joint he had with Emil called Hello that he used in the what was that? He used that in the Fubu commercial, I think it was. Listen, the album was dope. This to me, that was LL Cool J. He brought his lyricism back. You know, people had counted LL out because he dropped a dud in Phenomenon like 2 years earlier, 3 years prior. When people count LL out, that's when he delivers. And I can listen to this album today and still feel like it's a fresh album. It was a classic album to me. I know a lot of y'all gonna disagree with me, and it's cool. I love that. I want to know what y'all gotta think. So leave me comments in the comment section and just freely let me know what you think is LL Cool J's best and worst project. And I greatly appreciate it. This is the Entertainment for One podcast, and I would definitely check y'all. Light up that comment section. I will check y'all later. Peace.